Welcome back. Presentation makes a huge difference. Look at this. Ooh, basic, but with a little presentation tweak, suddenly it looks like a professional sketch. Or maybe like this okay drawing, but sprinkle a little bit of magic and bam, this looks a lot more majestic. So what's happening here? What are some of the best tweaks you can make to your art to take it from like, nah, to damn well? Should I really be revealing all my secrets like this? I'll show you everything pros do all. It's mostly me, but inspired by a lot of different professional artists. Anyways, what we do to elevate our art. Stuff you can apply relatively quickly to art that you already have to make them look pro in just a couple of minutes, even when they aren't. Now, I'm giving away my secret knowledge, so I hope you'll pay the class fee of either one like or one sub. All right, we got a couple of secrets to go over, so let's go right into it before I change my mind. Here's what we have on the menu today. The chapters will be marked in the timeline so you can easily go back to it when needed. The first secret on the menu will be aimed at making your line drawings look better. Obviously, the most important factor will be to start with a decent base drawing, like something not too sketchy, maybe something like I have here. It just needs to be relatively clean, you know? And as long as it's cleaned up, even not so great drawings should look much better. So how can we upgrade the presentation here? I mean, it's not bad as is, but it can definitely be better. So let's level this up. The first step to make this better will be to create a new layer and fill the silhouette of our character with a super light shade of gray, almost white. You're probably wondering how that has anything to do with the line art, but hold on a second. It'll all make sense soon. So once that flat layer is done, we're gonna go back and select our line art layer, then duplicate it. With the new copy selected, we're gonna go in our filters tab and apply a Gaussian blur effect. All right, now that looks pretty good already, but the blur is bleeding outside the silhouette, so that's not really nice. See this? Ooh. We need to get rid of that. And remember the flat layer we have? Now we need it. We'll just need to control click that layer to select its content, you know, that's the shortcut for it. And then back on our blurred line art layer, we'll invert the selection to essentially select everything but the silhouette we had selected. And now we can just comfortably erase the blurry edges that we don't want. Either just manually erase it with an eraser or just clicking the delete button to clear all of it at once. Now look at this. That's nice. See the difference? We're not done though. Next, let's add some inner glow to the flats layer to help define the silhouette better. It just needs a little bit, just like that. Ooh. Oh yes, and then the last thing I'll usually do is color the eyes white to make them pop some more, and maybe add a subtle eye color to help emphasize the face as the focal point. The light flat color is actually gonna stay like that, you know, again, the goal is to help our character's silhouette pop from the white background. Actually, real quick, let's lock the line art layer and draw over the lines for the hair with a slightly lighter color just to make it a little different so that it pops. I think that helps a lot. What do you think? It still reads as like a line art drawing, right? Like we didn't push it to the point where it becomes a colored illustration, but I think you'll agree the result is a lot nicer. But maybe you prefer when things are more colorful. I do too, but I still like when the drawing reads as a line art piece first, not necessarily a full colored drawing. So what I do is kind of an in-between a colored drawing and a simple line art. So while you could definitely leave it as is, what I'll do is typically go a bit further and add some very muted colors where I want the viewers to focus on. So for that, usually the hair will be my go-to, and I'll also give my characters like some red blush accents, you know, like where it makes sense. And then the last thing I'll do, and I keep saying the last thing, but this is the last one for real, to finalize my presentation is usually to darken the bottom of my characters, which will also help to bring the focus to the face, which again is the focal point for these drawings. And maybe also drop shadows. Ooh, there we go. This is a super quick step, which I think really wraps things up nicely. I mean, look at that. It still reads as a line art drawing, just better. And all of that took less than 5 minutes. Of course, having a strong base drawing will have a much bigger impact than all these tweaks, and I do teach everything an artist could possibly need to learn to draw killer characters in my art program, and I just launched the biggest sale we've ever had for it, but more on that later. All right, now let's say you instead have a colored drawing or a painting like either of these here. Here's what some really quick tweaks could do to the final result. Boom, it's subtle, but it looks much better, right? Of course you agree. So here's everything I did to these, just 4 quick tweaks to instantly make any drawing better. So what happened between this stage in this stage? Well, first of all, let's add some noise. I think a lot of people would just go right in here and add noise, to whatever layer they have selected, but there's a much better way to do this. First, you create a new layer that you fill with 50% gray, and then you set that layer to overlay mode. So it should disappear technically, but it's still there. And from here, let's apply a noise filter, or I also like something that you might like as well, pointillize, which is slightly better when you want the grain to be a little bigger. So for this to work as intended, you just want to have your background color selected as white, and let's just hit OK. And as you can see, this is what we get. Very similar to noise, but it's a bunch of little dots on a white background instead. Now for some of these details, I'll want the noise to be a little larger. So what I can do is just create a selection and then scale this up. Basically, I'm scaling up the details for the stuff that's in the foreground. And then of course, this looks a little too intense, so we can lower the opacity until we get something that we're happy with. There you go. Before, after. Now, of course, if you wanted to add noise, it would be the exact same process, just, with the noise option instead of pointillize. All right, now that I'm happy with the image, I'm going to flatten everything, and you can do that like as a duplicate. So you can always go back if needed. And in Photoshop, we're going to go here in lens correction, go to custom, and then add some vignette effects. So this is going to darken the corners. This just helps to kind of frame the image really nicely. Of course, you could do this manually as well, like with a soft brush, just painting the four corners. But I love lens correction in Photoshop because you can do the chromatic aberration effect at the same time here. So what I would do usually is just bring this up here to the max because it's a very high resolution image. So I can add a ton of this and it won't really affect too much. But if your resolution is on the smaller side, then you might want to add a little less. Otherwise, it might be too much. All right, let's add some blue and yellow as well. There you go. So before, after. So the chromatic aberration effect, very subtle, but you can see here on the knee, it would be like that blue fringe that you get. It just adds a little bit of richness to the colors. Alternatively, though, if you don't use Photoshop, what you could do is, of course, do all of that manually. So with a big soft brush, I can just go ahead and add some black to the corners very lightly. And then we can recreate the chromatic aberration as long as you have access to your channels here. So we can go and select maybe the red channel, make the whole stack visible. And then with this selected, we can just nudge it over just a little bit like that to very lightly misalign our channels. And as a result, we get this chromatic aberration effect. All it is just shifting one of the channels by a couple of pixels. And we're all set. And then the fourth step will be to add particles floating in the scene. And I say the fourth step, you can do any of these steps in any order, it really doesn't matter. But yeah, anyways, like I find this just adds a lot of atmosphere really easily. It could be ashes like in this one, pollen maybe like being carried by the wind here, or just dust particles floating around. But regardless which one you use, the process is the same. I'll always have two layers. So one is going to be in focus and another one's going to be out of focus that I'll just, blur a little bit to give that depth of field look. You can also apply a directional blur if you prefer, if you want to make it seem like the particles are moving a bit. It's definitely more dynamic that way, so just depending on the drawing. But yeah, I think all of this is much nicer, right? Right? But obviously, the base drawing does play a huge role, and you're in luck because I have tutorials covering almost everything when it comes to learning to draw awesome characters right here on the channel, which is why you should definitely be subscribed. Like this popular video on drawing the human body. But if you want more structure in your studies, like if you're really serious about leveling up your skills, you might want to check out my complete art education program with the link in the video description. We just reached 30,000 students, which is insane. And to celebrate, we started our massive holiday sale early this year. So check the link below for all the details and know exactly when the sale ends, but you'll be able to get it at half the regular price for a limited time only. It'll never be this cheap again. Oh, and of course we have an awesome community on our school's private Discord. I mean, the reviews speak for themselves. And if you're already a student, thank you so much. All right, back to the video. Now for the final trick, let's go back to character drawings and see what we can do with the background to make this more interesting. It's a problem a lot of artists have. I used to as well. You have like a cool character, but whatever you add in the background just ends up making the whole thing look like garbage. So I'll show you two quick methods that seriously require very little skill, but look super cool. So here's the first one. We'll just add a wall right behind the character onto which we'll be able to have a cast shadow. Now, this might sound complicated, but I'm telling you, a baby could do it. So for the background color, we'll just paint that a flat color. And it's usually best to use a color that's somewhat complementary to the dominant color in your design, right? So like I use a lot of warm colors here. So I'll try something cooler for the background, you know, like a bluish tint. And now we can add the cast shadow. So for that, I'll just go ahead and duplicate my character layer and darken or like paint the version below all black or any dark color, really, it doesn't matter. And then from here, all I gotta do is slide it to match the direction of the light on my character. Now the light is going in this direction-ish, so I'll just slide it the opposite way, reduce the layer opacity a little bit, and ooh, also now we have cast shadows. Look at this. And now with a big soft brush, we can paint maybe some light on the wall to make this look even nicer. And as I said, you know, like super quick. Now we have a background. That looks kind of nice, right? All right, the second method will work best when you can see the bottom of the character touching the ground, because the first method wouldn't really work in that case. So I'm going to start by duplicating my character layer again and turning it black. Now, this time we'll scale this down vertically to make it appear as if the shadow was being cast on the ground. Now, when you do this, sometimes like the feet might not match perfectly, so you might need to do some touch-ups, but otherwise very similar to what we did before. And then for the background, I usually go with a classic studio lighting where the bottom here will be lighter to suggest, you know, like a floor, like the light shooting from above and then bouncing off the floor. And that also helps make the shadow a bit more visible. And for the background, maybe I'll add a little bit of a gradient like that. What do you think? I think it's much better, like short of having to draw a full-on background. Now, hopefully these tricks help you get more attention for your art. They should. Like, I do all of these tricks every single time. If you know my art, you've seen those before. They're all my personal recipes, but you know, don't hesitate to use them. I really don't mind. Some of these things were inspired by different artists over the years anyway, so go for it. Now, if you do prefer more detailed backgrounds for your characters, which is understandable, I actually have a full class going over all of the steps to creating awesome looking environments. And I'll put the link to that class up on screen here in just a second, so maybe I'll see you over there.